Hey gang, welcome to this episode of the Dealer Playbook Podcast. Sitting down with my buddy, my pal, 5-time guest on the podcast, Elise Kephart, who is a master at BDC, lead follow-up. You can follow her all over the socials, but she's also somebody who's, I wanted to talk to about the buzz. But before we get into that, Elise, thanks for joining me on the Dealer Playbook Podcast.
Thank you, Michael. Yes, 5 times. That's kind of crazy. All the different, just the different journeys and the different topics that we've talked about over the years. And here we are.
Remember that time you thought I was a crazy stalker guy in Atlantic City?
Remember that time we were roommates?
Oh, man. Yeah. Hey, gang, don't read too much into it. So I wanted to get your take on this as I fix my headphones here. I want to get your take on this. What's the buzz I'm talking about? Obviously, it's AI. There's a lot of talk about artificial intelligence. People are playing around with ChatGPT. I've been playing around with it. It's crazy. But of course, like anything, we gravitate towards this buzz topic, and then we start to contemplate all of the ways it's going to take over our jobs. I know you've built an automated platform for lead follow-up. We're going to talk about that in a minute, but I wanted to get your take. Do you see AI as something that replaces humans, or can it ultimately just make us more efficient?
Between those two choices, I think you can look at it both ways, but my belief is that it should be an enhancement. An enhancement meaning it eliminates the time or the labor of something that you would have had to do manually anyways. But at the core of it, it's an enhancement because a machine, something coded, is never going to be able to replace you. It's never going to be able to replace me because I'm a human. I have, I'm a live human being. And when it comes to specifically any type of sales transaction, right, where it's an exchange of money for some type of value or money for some type of service, then a machine will never be able to do that. But it is kind of a fine line where you think about how ATMs have been built to enhance the process with banks and tellers, how there's self-checkouts at grocery stores. I know for me, when I do a self-checkout, it's because I see no value in going through a grocery store line. Like, it kind of just annoys me, right? I would rather just do it on my own. And I think we have to be aware of that, specifically in the car biz industry, where, if I'm a salesperson or and I'm a BDC rep and I serve no value to the consumer, right? Meaning the customer would rather do it with what they think is a real human, right? But it's not. Then that's, I think, where you should be nervous. So I think it sort of almost takes a good look at your people and your processes. It's always been as such, but really specifically to people, again, AI should not be a replacement for your people. It should be an enhancement. But if you do have a team or a culture where, and you see it all the time, right, where the person's just not motivated. Not even motivation might not even be the right word. That you could just tell that it's like they're just taking whatever paycheck you're giving them just to be there, right? And it's better than working at McDonald's and flipping burgers for about the same, because they can kind of just sit there in their desk and do a couple clicks and do that. But if that's how your BDC is ran, or that's how your internet team is ran, and it's not filled, it's not a team that wants to win, that has that desire to actually help the consumer, that gets excited about talking on the phone versus like wanting to be like, oh no, I don't want to talk on the phone. If specifically for internet sales and BDC, if you have team members that don't like to talk on the phone and they like to do this, even down to closing the appointment or closing the sale, then, I look at it like you don't understand the probability of sales, because the pure fact that once you get into the point in your process where it's a live conversation, whether it's a live phone call or face-to-face, that is where AI is never going to be able to that's what it will never be able to replace if you are a person of value, right? To whomever your audience is. So, I think if people are going, oh my gosh, is this going to replace me? Really, the solution is looking at, okay, what are the actual skill sets? Meaning you're not just naturally born with these, and a robot or a computer doesn't have these, right? What are the skill sets that I need to improve on to where I can use an AI to relieve myself of all the manual labor of certain tasks, let's say. But
Right.
what are the skill sets that's still gonna bring the consumer or the customer value at the end of it?
I think about, you know what it makes me think of? So I take my son Dallin to a Dallas Mavericks game. First NBA game for both of us. So we don't, it was really cool, and it was, a really record breaking, shattering game. They were trailing by 10 the entire game, and then came back by the last second, sinking a 2-pointer that tied it up, put them in overtime. They won the game. It was really phenomenal. But you know what it made me think of as I was listening to you is they are using systems. The teams are using systems, the coaches, the kinesiologists, the sports medicine. They're using systems, call it AI, to analyze the players, their performance, not to replace the player, to make that player better at what they do.
Yeah.
What that does is it mitigates so much guesswork that then Luka Doncic can just show up and be the best player that he can possibly be. Like, he still has to play the game.
Right.
The value of the game is still that the players are playing it, but not having to waste their time. Same thing with, I saw what Adidas, the technology they use to make new shoes, and it was mind blowing.
Yeah.
How it analyzes the step and the stride and the distance of each stride and all these different things. And then the anatomy of the foot. They're using systems, AI systems, to analyze all of this for them so that they can get down to the brass tacks of what the value of Adidas is making the shoe.
Yeah.
So somebody still has to do the thing. They just don't have to do all of these other things that were previously associated with it.
Right. It's cutting back. A huge part of it is just cutting. I mean, you only have 24 hours in a day, right? Or
Right.
I forget how many minutes that breaks into, but there is no reason to waste those minutes or those hours or that time if you don't have to, right? So specifically for internet leads, most internet teams or BDCs are set up to where it's like, okay, here's the follow-up process. Here's what I want you to do. Here's what your job is. Get the appointment. Yes, but before I get the appointment, you need to do all these things that you're going to hate doing, by the way, and just to get the customer to respond to you, right? And so you see it every day. Like, it's this Monday, it's this, depending on what the process is, it can be a lot of tasks and just like these, just mundane hamster wheel kind of tasks. And so if you look at it like that, if there's an AI, which there is because I built it, or an automation system, right, where two principles really need to come in mind. It's going to eliminate that labor, right? Anything digital that a sales rep or a BDC rep or an internet rep has to do. So email, text, email again, just to get that customer to respond. Well, if you can have a system where that part of it is eliminated, the only part that's not going to be eliminated is when the customer actually is speaking to you on the phone. I'm sure down the road, like, there's going to be AI where it's like, that's probably actually buildable, right? Where you can have like build a voice and have fake phone conversations. But even at that, right, it's not, that's where the skill set I think comes into play here, right? Making sure that when you are, when you get to that point on the phone call or face to face, that you are something that the customer is going to be pulled into, and you're not just a website, or you're not just a machine. But it is interesting to me. The way I built my AI was, one, under the principle that it's going to solve that problem. It's going to eliminate the labor of these mundane, like really long lists of things that an agent or a rep has to do just to get the customer to respond. So it eliminates that labor. But on the flip side, the customer or the consumer has no idea, right? In fact, the AI that I built, it was made so that the conversation and the messaging seems like it's personable. And I think that's kind of where a lot comes into play as well, because and I did an episode on the CarBiz podcast about this a while ago. If a word track specifically to text messaging or email works, then you should be able to have a real screenshot to prove it. Right. And a lot of times on AI websites, like the demo that I see is this conversation that is like a graphic, right? But that kind of conversation doesn't happen if that's not a real conversation that happens with the customer, where it's like, hi, how can I help you? Oh, yes, I want to come in and test drive this car. Okay, great. Like Monday at 9:00 or at 1:00. Bro, It's not that easy. Are you kidding me? Like it sort of is almost like a slap in the face. Or if you've ever had to sit in a BDC for 8 hours, even just 8 hours, even just for one day. And a lot of people go, oh, it's not that easy. It's really easy just to set an appointment. That's all you got to do. But I look at it like a skill set. And so I think AI shouldn't be feared. I think there is a line of how far it should go, right? But it should be there to enhance, to enhance your processes. And it's very similar to the Mavericks game. In the old days, before all that technology, what did they have to do? Hire a whole team of people to analyze that stuff, right? Probably like higher labor costs, more time, and so
today, the movie Moneyball would be 3.5 seconds long because the computer would just ingest all of the data and spit out like, you need this player, this player, this player, this player. Sorry, Brad Pitt, nothing to be made here.
Yeah. It is interesting, with when it comes to like a lot of the technology. For me, I get this little pep in my step, or I don't know, maybe because I have a little bit of, I like to control things a little bit. I have that as a toxic trait of mine. But when I can look at a whole conversation, it's kind of a trip, right? Like look at a whole text conversation between a consumer out in the real world and an agent. Right? An agent that's writing this, and the text message is like the what I would train on. This is how you say, this is a great example of a sales rep that did their job, right? On how to get the customer engaged and then bringing it to a phone call. And what's interesting now is that whole conversation, Michael, the agent never wrote anything, right? So like it was all pre-written, but the customer doesn't know that it's pre-written. And that to me is kind of an amazing, an amazing thing. I think it can be a superpower, right? There's a lot of power to it to be able to control conversation quite like that. But it should be there to enhance and save time, Right.
Because again, it's not eliminating the need for that agent, but it is mitigating so much busy work.
Right.
Where now the way I see it is now, if I'm that agent, I'm thinking about how I can become now the best, most skilled, trained, exercised agent there is. Because now I don't have to waste my time with all of that other crap. And if you look at what makes a salesperson or what we do for a living, I think what we do for a living is we solve problems. Right. And if you look at the root of, okay, well, what if you were to ask an internet sales rep or a BDC, if they were to rub a magic genie and go, okay, genie, this is like the number one, these are like my top 3 wishes. Number 1, I don't got to do like zilch pretty much to get a customer to respond to me with no Kevin or Karen attitudes. Right. That would be like a magical, it'd be like, oh gosh, I wish there was a way to do that. Well, there is, right? That's the problem that you're solving. Eliminating what pretty much, is the grind of that job title a lot of times, to eliminate that. But it's not in a negative way to where, the customer is upset in any way. Right. Right.
If the customer doesn't know
go ahead.
It's an automation, then it's built right. Right. But a lot of times you do see some AIs and they got some kinks to work out, because like nobody talks like that. Right. You can tell that it's a robot or that it's a chatbot of some type.
Right. I like how you're making the distinction very naturally between AI and automation.
Yeah.
Because even, to a degree, if you look at something like ChatGPT, we're all talking about it like it's AI. The reality of it, though, is that it is pulling from a data pool that exists.
Yeah.
And that's where it's pulling its answers from. That's why there's the very clear disclaimer, hey, this might be inaccurate or out of date, because it's only pulling data from its data lakes up to a certain point.
Right.
But often in our industry, and with NADA coming up, we're going to hear probably this is just, I'm scared about the AI conversation that this is probably resurged. Really, it's automation that's running, and it's programmatic. If this happens, do that. If that happens, do this.
Yeah.
And I think it's important that you're distinguishing this one from the other, because true AI is Skynet. It's like something that can think for itself, that doesn't need a data lake, a sentient being, if you will, that thinks and acts of its own, essentially its own free will, which is completely freaky. Nothing like that exists yet. But I love what you're saying about automation, in that, you, in my mind, Elise, you're unique because you're one of the few that actually has had your feet on the fire. You've proven out and built a proven process. You've implemented it across so many stores and it works. And now you've taken that brain trust and you've injected it into an automated system. Now, before I ask you this next question, I have an intermediate question, because it's burning a hole in my mouth. I didn't say pocket, but there's a lot of debate in the industry about different lead sources and where the leads come from. Not all lead sources created equal. The first part of my question is, from your experience, is that the case? Or based on what you've seen, does it really matter? That it's more of a math game than it is a lead source game.
Absolutely. I just look at it, if you just rewind the tape from the moment that specifically to carbon, like the automotive industry and leads, whether it's on Facebook, whether it doesn't matter really to me where the customer actually, the lead came from. I look at it at that quick moment of a second where the customer willingly was on their phone, as we oftentimes are, and willingly got to the pop-up, the fill out form, if it's a website, the one button that you got to click on Facebook, if it's on Facebook, right? But they willingly made that decision to go, yes, I'm going to share my information, or I'm actually going to take the time and if it's a form fill out, type in my information. Nobody does that for fun. I find myself when I get to any type of website, and there is a split moment where you go, whoa, wait a minute. Do I care this much? Because if I'm going to do this, I'm putting my information out there. As much as customers might say, oh, I didn't know what I was doing. Oh, I was just clicking around. It's a defense mechanism on steroids, right? There is a moment, and it's not even like you have to be a smart human being. There is a moment where it's a trigger, it's an impulse maybe, but there is a moment where they willingly filled out willingly shared their information. Specifically to, I guess, again, dealership leads and so forth, where I don't really consider those in any way, shape, or form cold calling. If it's I guess I should backtrack that. If it's what I like to call a loyalty customer or some type of equity mining tool, then that I would consider more on the cold side, because they didn't actually fill out any type of form and reach out to you or share their information. You're going in, you're actually reaching out to them. But anything other than that type of call, a loyalty or a upgrade program or equity mining, anything like that aside, it is just a numbers game, right? If somebody puts in, and we can argue about this, but they only put it in their email, they didn't put their phone number, and their name's, Darth Vader. It's they think about this. Somebody actually cared that much to think of a fake name to put in, so nonetheless, it still comes to that point where they filled out the
paradigm
form.
Shift. Yeah. Huge paradigm shift. And I asked that maybe as a leading question. I'm always curious, because obviously as a marketing agency owner, somebody that generates first party leads for our client partners, that tends to be a retort at times. Oh, but the quality of the lead sucked. And I've always, and we didn't talk about this beforehand, but I've always been intrigued by this idea of, but there is someone with a heartbeat breathing oxygen that said, I'm going to click on that. Yeah, now there's going to be some of them that are going to be a mistake. And, oh, sorry, my kid had my phone and they were scrolling on Facebook, whatever. I get that. But when somebody puts in their name, their phone number, their email address, and the type of vehicle they're interested in, I tend to go, that's a lot of steps, especially in this attention deficit, society we want to believe we all live in. And so I wanted to get your take on that. That's definitely really interesting. And it makes it more systematic. Like, you want more leads? Spend more.
It's the concept, I think, that we can, it can go into, like, everybody talks about digital retailing, where you can just like buy a car online. And, obviously there's third-party companies that aren't doing so well right now that have been trying to eliminate the dealer with that whole, with that whole process of just skip the dealer, buy a car from a online, directly online, or from a vending machine, essentially. But what's interesting to me, and it's always interested me, is like, even before those companies existed, and I've just been working leads for this long, you look at, like, okay, what is a lead source where a customer has to fill out a lot of information, right? Pretty much like you would think that they filled out so much information that they're ready to buy a car, right? Like digital retailing, straight through, no BS. So I look at it like a credit application. Somebody that goes on your website, gives their blood type, gives like the most like private information, like their social security, their full information. And so common sense like would tell us, oh, well, this customer's ready to buy a car. They just gave us their blood type. They gave us not only their name and phone number, but their job history, everything.
Their social. Yeah.
Their social, so. And they even maybe even clicked on a vehicle, built it out, everything comes in. A typical rep would go, yes, this is the best kind of lead, right? A finance app linked to a vehicle, ready to go.
Yeah, all the golden nugget.
Yeah. Why on earth then do reps still have to chase that customer? After they get the lead, right? You would think that the customer would just pick up first time, respond to their text, respond to their email, within, I don't know, right away. But no, there's still a chasing game involved, which has always been interesting to me. So even if you take that example, or you just take something where somebody swiped real quick, or it's still that first step of any opportunity is you get the information, and you have to have that customer actually almost revive themselves and give a heartbeat or give an engagement again. Yeah.
Which comes full circle back to, this automation you built. And I kind of want to end on this, so you see all of this predicated on your years and years and years of experience. And I'm just I don't know why I'm picturing Elise Kephart under the covers with a flashlight and a notebook. I'll go to bed in a minute, Mom, but I got an idea. I'm picturing this kind of a thing.
It kind of is that crazy scientist in the lab kind of thing. Build when you really want to get into a lot of that.
How long did it take you to build this program out?
6 months, but it wasn't it was built off of, anytime that I go into a store, anytime that I do training, or anytime that I'm working with somebody or a team, and we're working leads, that's what kind of keeps my blade sharp. If I can't write an envelope, this is such a weird game of mine, but it got to the point where I want to be able to write in an envelope everything that's going to happen with this lead as we work it right now. And if my envelope prediction is wrong, then I'm going to go under my sheets late at night and figure out how do I get my pre-predicted envelope accurate, meaning, and from every aspect, whether it's okay, this customer is going to pick up the phone, and I'm going to be able to set this appointment in 6 minutes. And if I don't set the appointment, here are the 11 reasons specifically why I won't set the appointment. And it's all pre-predicted, but I'm constantly still doing that. As far as if that's how I built it. If it's when I'm working leads, and this is over the last like decade plus, I'm constantly analyzing, the conversations, whether it's a phone call, text, or email conversation thread, and looking at, okay, if a customer says this, if a customer wrote this, what did the rep write before that? And then thinking about it like, okay, well, if I want the customer to say this, then what does the rep need to say or write before that for a customer to say this? And so it's just a lot of that kind of back and forth. But
wait a minute. You mean you actually tested to see if this works?
Yeah. It's really funny too, because I just get such a kick when I have kind of some emails and everything where they just seem so personable. It looks like and the customer actually responds gets a kick out of the email, right? But they respond, and it's just funny because it's just like, oh my gosh, that never was actually written, but it did its job. Like, and we're talking about too, where I can look at history files of a lead, and it could be an email only customer. And this customer gets like 4 emails in a matter of like 6 hours, right? 7 hours, all from the sales rep, all personally written, but not really written by them. And most people go, oh my gosh, the customer's going to get so upset at you. But that's where it comes down to like, well, what is the content of your AI? Like, what is the content of what is being written? Because I built it so the customers wouldn't get upset, but there is an algorithm and a psychology to that. So, but I look at it a lot of times where I'm like, oh man, there's no way the sales rep no way a sales rep typically would have actually put in the work and emailed this customer 4 times in like 6.5 hours. But guess what? We have a positive response from the customer. That never would have happened otherwise. Or the engagement finally happens like 2 or 3 days after the lead comes in. And then at that point, what I've sort of calculated is the probability of a customer telling you they bought elsewhere, right? Or something that like you can't control at that point. Those types of scenarios start to increase once you're past that 2 days. So I sort of built my whole system on, I want the customer to give me a positive engagement, a positive response, reply back, text back, email back, or actually pick up their phone in the first 2 days. Because anything past that, it's not to say that that they're lost or anything like that, but the probability
decreases.
Where does
this? So this is now. Where does this get deployed? Is this installed in the CRM? Is it?
Yeah.
Like, how does this work?
Yeah. So currently, right now, Vin Solutions is the one that kind of has it fully coded. Dealer Socket, I'm working with to get a lot of the things similar coded. Those are Dealer Socket, Vin Solutions, eLead, DriveCentric, Dealer CRM. Those are typically the main ones. Everyone kind of works a little different, but yeah, I'm building it ideally so that all the reporting and everything is going to be within your own CRM, because that's typically
fully deployed in Vin Solutions.
Yeah.
But available to the other ones.
Yeah. And so Vin Solutions right now is the one that is the first CRM that I built it, that I made it work with. Yes.
Gotcha. This is amazing. And because I know you and I talk, I know there's dealers all over the country being like, how do we hire Elise to just come and do this in our store? And it's like, bro, you can't afford Elise. So, but here's the next most best thing, which is you can have Elise's brain trust installed in your CRM, and then she can train your team on it, and you're off to the races. So for those listening that are curious, that think, oh man, this is definitely something I need in 2023 because it solves all of these problems for me. Yeah. How do they get in touch with you to learn more?
I am on obviously all the social media platforms, but a lot of times those can get a little bit cluttery. So can I share my number on here? Is that
you can do whatever you want?
Like, I think
you're going to get a ton of calls from unknown numbers, but
I do what consumers do. I will, like, a lot of times I'll have I'll send it.
She got a burner.
To see if it's like a real, like, is it an iMessage? Is it like a real?
Right.
caller ID is built into phone now, so it typically tells you potential spam or Michael Cirillo.
Right. Gotcha.
But 805-441-3398 are my digits.
Text or call. You don't care what?
What's another reason that I built this is I wanted it to be something scalable and workable for, any type of store, whether it's independent, right? I've worked with independent stores where they don't really even have a BDC. They just have like one person, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
And so that typically is a team that I wouldn't recommend an on-site for because that's a big investment, right? For just one person. So anything over on this end or all the way to, a 30 rooftop dealer group, right? Where again, it could be different manufacturers. Some RV dealerships have reached out to me. Unfortunately, they have different CRMs that I'm not too familiar with quite yet. But this is something that isn't just, my goal is not to just have it in the car space, right? But to have it within RV and power sports. Independent. I designed it to have to be scalable across the board.
Love it. Hit us with the digits one more time.
Yeah, 805-441-3398.
Love it. Elise, thanks so much for joining me on the Dealer Playbook podcast.
Thank you, Michael.